Hi, this is Dan Bullard, retired electronics engineer, sitting in the front deck of my houseboat. Hey, the sun is shining. It's not supposed to be. The weather said it's going to be rainy, but it ain't. I want to talk about a few things. Some people have a hard time making sine waves. Have I said that before? Okay, I want to show you this from, I'm always searching the web for stuff on harmonics, always. And I found this one, and I've seen it before, but I finally went and looked into it. Oh my God, this thing is horrible. Now, it's good in theory, I guess, but the execution's really bad. These are clearly half circles, clearly. It's not even close to a sine wave. And he's trying to show how the third harmonic is, 3 times the fundamental, and the harmonic is in phase with the fundamental. It's really, really, really bad because it's not a sine wave. Don't trust anybody that can't make a sine wave. Don't trust a single person that can't make a sine wave. Now, who did this? About the author. Richard P. Burnham is currently Chief Technologist for Dranitz Technologies Incorporated, having previously been Vice President of Engineering and Strategic Planning. Richard also has an MSEE in Computer Architecture and Programming from Rutgers. He's a member of IEEE. I was a member of IEEE, and I finally quit them because they wanted $1,400. Okay, now this is important for you to remember. They wanted $1,400 to print my book, and it would have been in black and white. But KDP will do it for color for free. They won't even charge any money. They just take a portion of the royalties, and you still get better royalties than you'd get from IEEE. So I quit IEEE. I was paying like $300 a year for nothing at all. This guy doesn't know a goddamn thing, and yet he's like the vice president of something, and he's got a master's from Rutgers. And I've badmouthed Rutgers in the past, and I'm happy to do it again. Really awful. I mean, this guy is just terrible. His explanation of harmonics is just terrible, terrible. Okay, now he's not the only idiot out there, and I don't know where this came from. Out of the blue, I got this message from a friend, what I thought was a friend of mine at Maxim. When I worked at Maxim, and I haven't talked about Maxim yet. Maxim, which is now part of Analog Devices. And I do kind of like Analog Devices, although they've been a problem for me. But Maxim, how did I get into Maxim? I was working for Next Test, and I was doing a lot of work for Maxim down in San Jose, down in Sunnyvale. And I wrote a test program for a filter to sell them a Next Test tester. And I sold them, I think it was close to $4 million worth of equipment. But the problem was, Next Test, I was hired as a marketing guy. As a marketing guy, you're not supposed to be doing applications, but they shipped me down to friggin' San Jose in Sunnyvale to do applications for Maxim. So I was going down to Maxim. I told them I would fly down on Monday, or fly down and be there on Monday, and then I would fly back on Thursday. That was my schedule. And so I had to spend 4 days a week away from home. And I had already gotten massively tired of being away from home. I was really, really not set up for travel. I ended up going down there until about Thanksgiving, and then I had to go down there for training and stuff. But I did sell them a bunch of Next Test testers, and a fairly expensive machine too. So they were like $4 million for like 6 or 7 testers. So it's, worth a lot of money for them. And I needed to get out of there. I really needed to get out of there because I couldn't stand the travel. And I told my boss I didn't want to travel. I told him that early on when I signed up, and he didn't listen to me. He said he was going to glue my ass to an airplane seat. So I finally talked to Maxim up in Hillsboro, up here in Oregon, and I interviewed with a guy named Paul Botsford, who I worked with at Credence, and Paul was very intimidating for a lot of people, but not to me. He was a marshmallow as far as I was concerned, because he was a guy who said that he could test a filter with an impulse. Well, you can't test a filter with an impulse. Impulse is too narrow, and if you make it wider so it has more energy, then it doesn't have a flat response, and you can't test a filter with anything other than a flat response. And that was my periodic white noise thing, where I tested it with a flat response using periodic white noise that I wrote a paper on, and it's pretty cool. But anyway, I interviewed with Maxim, and they loved me. And then they started fighting over who was going to get me. And it turned out that the RF department needed somebody who knew mixed signal, because a lot of their RF parts were going to go mixed signal. And the first part I did for them was a TV tuner on a chip, and that was, didn't have a lot of digital, but it was RF. And then the next step, which I started working on, was an RF device. It was a TV tuner, but it had what they called MaxFi. It was a Maxim physical interface for ATSC, and it was going to be basically a DSP-based machine to decode the digital data that was encoded in ATSC. So you could fiddle with it, so you could go into MaxFi and tweak it to make it better for your application for television. And that was the next part that I was going to work on. And I did design some of it, but then I got laid off. But they didn't lay me off. They transferred me to another guy, Mick Francetic, who was my boss at Credence years ago. And so I ended up working for Mick again. I did a lot of stuff for Maxim. But moving to Maxim was a good idea. I thought Maxim was going to be a good company, but it wasn't really. It was kind of a... I didn't like my boss. Not before, I mean, before I worked for Mick, I worked for another guy, and he was just awful. He would constantly berate me for being stupid, and I didn't like him. But one of the guys who had a positive opinion of me was this guy, Rob D'Angelo. And Rob was a fairly high-level guy at Maxim, and he was connecting me on LinkedIn. And I don't know what happened to Rob. I thought he had a good opinion of me, but he wrote me this message. He says, "You're an idiot." So I don't know what happened to Rob, but this is a feather in my cap, okay? You can't hurt me with insults, because I know what I discovered. I discovered some really cool stuff. And what it means is that Rob, who I believe has a master's degree, Rob is just another guy with a master's degree who doesn't know a goddamn thing. He thinks that I'm like making it up, you know. I mean, a lot of people make up stuff about harmonics. I just showed you one. A guy with a master's degree makes stuff up about harmonics. I'm not making this stuff up. This is absolutely true. I mean, I can prove it mathematically. But Rob, he now believes I'm an idiot, and so I think he disconnected from me. And so that's another feather in my cap. A guy who worked at Maxim, who thought I was pretty cool, and then later decided, nope, Dan doesn't know what he's talking about because he thinks he knows how harmonics work. Well, guess what? I do know how harmonics work. Okay. There were a lot of people who didn't believe Darwin. There's still a lot of people who don't believe in Darwin. So anyway, Rob, sorry, you think I'm an idiot. You know, Rob, I didn't ever see him actually do anything, but I'm sure he did. But there were a lot of people at Maxim that way. Maxim was a real problem in a lot of ways. They were no Motorola, I'll tell you that. Motorola was fantastic. Analog Devices was pretty good. And I worked at Analog Devices in Limerick, Ireland. I worked at Analog Devices in Cambridge, Massachusetts, all over the place. I did a lot of stuff for Analog Devices. Motorola, Intel, I worked at some awesome places. Maxim was one of my least favorite places to work. They drove me crazy. And in the end, because they transferred me to this group that Mick was heading, and he worked for Don Greer. I really liked Don, great guy. But then they took me away from Don, and I said, okay, that's it, I quit. And I did, I quit. And you know, it was good timing to get out of there. I didn't like Maxim very much, but it was a way to get out in excess. Now, I want to mention that one video that I did where I measured the phase angle where I distorted a sine wave, and like I said, in the Applicos I could never know what that phase angle was. There's no way at all to know what that phase angle was. And if you remember what I did, it's one of my favorite videos. I've got almost 800 views. But in that video, what I was doing was I was distorting the top and then the bottom, and then both the top and bottom of a sine wave with the Applicos. And I was doing it by clipping the top and bottom, and then both the top and bottom of a sine wave with the ADC that I was testing. And it was really cool. And I didn't know where I was clipping that thing, but I could see the spectrum. And so then I looked very closely at the spectrum, and I found I was clipping at 242.8473539 degrees. Now, 242.8473539 degrees, you say, oh, that's a lot of digits. How many of them are real? Well, the only, that was nice. It is Monday, so people are coming home from Coon Island or wherever. If I have my phone, I can look him up and see where it's coming from. That has a lot of digits. Now, some of those digits are real, and I did a post on LinkedIn about this, and I got, like I said, I got all kinds of hate mail about it. But a lot of those digits are real. And what's the actual resolution here? What's the actual resolution? The resolution is, remember, 360 divided by the number of points in my transfer function. So 360 divided by 10,001, let's call it 10,000. 360 divided by 10,001, that means it's got 36 millidegrees of resolution. Now I could make that better. I could get more resolution from that. And the way I would do it is I have to make the transfer function 100,000 samples. 100,000 samples. Now, it already takes 45 minutes to run this Excel thing to do the FFT, because it's going to do a recalculate and a recalculate and a recalculate through the VLOOKUP table. Now, you think about how long it's going to take if I have a 100,000 point VLOOKUP table instead of a 10,000 point VLOOKUP table. I'm not even sure that it's possible to do a 100,000 point VLOOKUP table. What I'd really like to do is go with 1,000,000. And if I did that, it would be in the microdegrees. Well, hundreds of microdegrees. So, but I did that with a very cool Excel program. And you're welcome to it if you want it. Just ask me for it. But here's the thing. Nobody on the planet has any idea that the angle's involved. And now you think, I want you to think about this. Why is the angle involved? It's nothing more than the fact that this is a sine wave, and I'm just looking at 2 points because it's always 2 points. If I have a distortion at, say, 45 degrees, it'll also show up at 135 degrees. It'll show up in 2 places. And so that's one reason why it's not, the Bullard harmonic solution isn't 2 times pi. It's pi. It's a sine of pi times whatever. If you read my book, you'll see it. But that's why it's not 2 times pi, because they do this. Now, in that thing that I posted on LinkedIn, this guy piped up, and he has a master's degree. This guy came out of left field. He's not hooked up to me, but he came out of left field, and he said, "Oh, you know that number, 242.8473539 degrees. That could be any number. That could be 300 degrees." No, it cannot be 300 degrees. It cannot be. And I've said this before. if you don't run into a distortion by the time you hit 270, you're home free. No distortion can happen after 270 degrees. And that's something I'd like to put in the Bullard harmonic solution. I'd like to modify the Bullard harmonic solution if I could, but you know, I'm not up to writing anymore, so it's just not going to happen. But there's only two places where a distortion can happen. From 0 to 90 degrees, or from 180 to 270. That's it. Now I know where when I explained the Bullard harmonic solution, I used some other numbers, but luckily the Bullard harmonic solution doesn't discriminate against those numbers. So if there's a distortion at 177, that distortion didn't just happen at 177 degrees, it happened also at 3 degrees because it happened in two places. So really I'd like to modify the Bullard harmonic solution, but I can't write, I can't read, I can barely read this stuff, so just be aware of that, you know. And I'm not going to write a new book, so buy distortion or buy harmonics or buy moron harmonics for morons. Don't wait for me to come out with a new book, because it ain't going to happen. Okay, so you know, generally speaking, here's the thing. Harmonics are, to me, incredibly important. Electronics has been a big boon to me. I mean, I made a fortune. I made a fortune. For a guy who just graduated high school in Tracy, California, I made a fortune in electronics. And that's because I have a fairly high IQ. And then because I don't have a degree, I took it, you know, I had a chip on my shoulder, obviously. I had a chip on my shoulder, and that chip drove me to find this stuff out because I needed to learn what these other guys were talking about. These guys with these master's degrees, they don't know anything. Terry Wilson, oh, that's just an artifact. He has a master's degree. He's probably not my friend anymore. And Rob D'Angelo, he apparently is not my friend anymore. He thinks I'm an idiot. Well, you know, I'm terribly sorry. I am terribly sorry. I don't mean to be mean, you know, but I discovered something that I think is super important. And of course, I think it's important because I discovered it. Nobody else has. And Rob just proved it. Rob proved it. You would not go to Albert Einstein and say, Einstein, you're a fucking idiot. You wouldn't do that. Even if he was wrong about something, you would not call Albert Einstein an idiot. You would not call Elon Musk an idiot. He's a genius. You can't say he's not. He might end up being wrong about something, but, you know, he's not an idiot. So, like I said, Rob D'Angelo saying that about me, that's a feather in my cap. Okay? I'm proving, that's what I set out on YouTube to do. I'm proving that nobody else knows what I know. And that means nobody else knows it except you. If you listen to me, if you pay attention to what I'm saying. If you don't, well, I'm sorry about that. You know, I'm sure I know there are people who support me. I'm getting a lot of likes on my videos, and I appreciate that. I really do. I hope you like my stuff. I really hope I'm teaching you something. And that's why I'm doing this. Okay? It's not just to make you look out that way. Oh, by the way, I got this picture when I was a Little Ambition, which I have since sold, so that's why you don't see it anymore. I took this picture of the houseboat in this marina, and here it is, and oh my God, there's a lot of sailboats around me, and there are. I mean, I have people around me living on sailboats. I don't live on a sailboat. I need something with a little more room, especially because I can't walk, I can't get around. So, you know, COVID took a lot out of me. But this is the beautiful place that I live, and it's fucking gorgeous. It really is. I'm so lucky to live here. My wife's out shopping. She drives 3 miles to go shopping. It's really great. And I don't drive anymore, so I'm down to like well, she has a car. I don't have a car. If I need to go somewhere and she's not willing to take me, I'll take Uber. And by the way, Rob, I want to say this to you, Rob, if you want me to come and speak at Maxim, and give a talk about harmonics, I'll do it. I'll have to take Uber, and you'll have to pay for my Uber, and you got to feed me lunch. But I'm happy to go to Maxim and teach you guys about harmonics. And if you think I'm an idiot, even if you said that, I'm willing to go there and let you hear me talk about harmonics. And if not, well, remain ignorant. That's all I got to say. Anyway, once again, from the rear of this damn Bullard, see ya.